Najbolje od svega je to što u početku, kada se sve otvaralo, nije bilo ljestvica, nije bilo mapa. Godine 1980. Robert Plant donio je odluku koja ga je koštala 800 milijuna dolara. Odustao je od najveće ponude u povijesti glazbe, a obožavatelji još uvijek ne znaju pravi razlog zašto. Ali ta je odluka bila samo početak života ispunjenog tajnama. Zabranjena veza sa sestrom bivše supruge, sin o kojem jedva govori i obrazac gubitka svih koje je ikada volio. Sada, sa 77 godina, Plant živi sam sa uspomenama koje su previše bolne da bi ih podijelio. Trenutni život rock legende nije samo tužan, gotovo je nevjerojatan. Robert Plant odrastao je u svijetu koji je bio istovremeno stabilan i nesiguran. Njegov otac, Robert C. Plant, bio je kvalificirani građevinski inženjer koji je radio na važnim projektima poput izgradnje pista tijekom Drugog svjetskog rata. Obitelj je živjela u West Bromwichu, težeći udobnosti srednje klase, ali se tamo nisu čvrsto nastanili. Prava napetost dolazila je od njegove majke, Annie Seeley Kane, koja je bila romskog podrijetla. To nasljeđe dalo je Plantu osjećaj misticizma, folklora i lutajućeg duha outsidera. To je bilo u oštrom kontrastu s urednim svijetom nacrta i građevina njegovog oca, život u crnoj zemlji. Nazvanoj po čađi i dimu koji su se dizali u zraku od teške industrije, djelovao je sivo i surovo. Majčini korijeni ponudili su mu drugačiji svijet ispunjen bojama i maštom, onaj koji je kasnije oblikovao njegove tekstove s temama mita i magije. Odrastanje između ta dva svijeta postalo je odlučujuća borba njegovih ranih godina. Kako je odrastao? Sukob s roditeljima postajao je sve teže ignorirati. Njegov otac se nadao da će krenuti sigurnim putem i postati ovlašteni računovođa, što se u poslijeratnoj Britaniji smatralo vrhuncem ugleda. Za Roberta C. Planta, koji se naporno trudio napredovati u hijerarhiji, pomisao da će njegov sin odustati od ovog sna bila je duboko razočaravajuća. Ali Robert je već pronašao nešto drugo što ga je potpuno obuzelo. Otkrio je blues s njegovom sirovom snagom i emocionalnom iskrenošću kroz umjetnike poput Muddyja Watersa, Howlin' Wolfa, i Sonny Boya Williamsona II. Glazba je govorila o boli i želji na načine koje je osjećao duboko u sebi, iako je odrastao daleko od svijeta koji je opisivala. Trošio je džeparac na rijetke uvezene ploče iz birminghamske trgovine The Discovery, zaključavajući se u svoju sobu kako bi proučavao svaki zvuk. Za njega to nije bila samo glazba, već način života koji je odbacivao tiho, sigurno postojanje koje su njegovi roditelji cijenili. Do svoje 16. godine pohađao je gimnaziju kralja Edvarda VI. U Stourbridgeu. Za njegovu obitelj to je bilo ponosno postignuće, odskočna daska za sveučilište i uglednu budućnost. Ali Robert se osjećao zarobljenim. The subjects he was forced to study, like Latin and mathematics, felt meaningless when compared to the electrifying pull of the blues. In his own words, he was a square peg in a round hole. At 16, with only a few GCEO-level passes, he made the bold decision to leave school. To his parents, it was not just a mistake, but a complete betrayal of everything they had worked for. To him, it was the only way forward. He wasn't just leaving school. He was leaving behind the life they had planned for him. Soon after, the tension at home reached a breaking point. At just 16, Robert left for good. It was not a grand adventure, but a difficult and uncertain time. With no money and nowhere to go, he slept on the floors of friends' homes, moving constantly, living the kind of drifting life he had once admired in the bluesmen he loved. His girlfriend, Maureen Wilson, who was slightly older, gave him both emotional and financial support. They eventually found a small flat together in Walsall, where she helped keep him afloat while he chased what looked like an impossible dream. Between 1964 and 1966, he barely spoke to his parents. To survive, he took hard manual labor jobs, the most punishing of which was laying tarmac for the construction company, Wimpy, in the West Midlands. The physical grind toughened him and gave him the grit that would later come through in his voice. Even while working these exhausting jobs, his nights were devoted to music. U 1966, he joined a group that gave him his first real taste of success. It was called the Band of Joy, and it soon became a legend in Birmingham and the Black Country. The band included drummer John Bonham, whose powerful playing matched Robert's soaring, untamed vocals in a way that felt electric. Together, they created a sound that hinted at something far bigger. On stage, Robert, with his long blonde hair and dramatic presence, earned the nickname the Wild Man of Blues from the Black Country. The Band of Joy built a strong local following, and Robert stood out as someone unique. Yet for all their energy, the band never landed a record deal and made little money. They played packed pubs and clubs, but were often paid in little more than beer money. It was a time of growth, but also deep frustration. By the summer of 1968, everything changed. Jimmy Page, the brilliant guitarist from the Yardbirds, faced a crisis. His band had just disbanded in July, leaving him with tour contracts in Scandinavia and the United States worth about $30,000. If he couldn't find a new group quickly, he risked financial disaster. His first choice for singer, Terry Reid, had turned him down, but Reid recommended Robert Plant instead. At the time, Robert was only 20 years old and barely surviving, making about $20 a week. For Page, meeting him wasn't casual. It was a desperate search for someone who could help him avoid both bankruptcy and obscurity. On July 1968, Page drove 120 miles from London to see Robert perform with the little-known band Hobbs Tweedle in front of a small audience at a Birmingham teacher training college. Robert's performance that night stunned him. He sang Jefferson Airplane's Somebody to Love and Blues standards with a voice that spanned 4 octaves, moving with a presence unlike anyone Page had ever seen. Robert seemed to carry a strange, almost mystical energy on stage. Page later admitted he thought there must be something wrong with him personally. Otherwise, some big band would have signed him already. The truth was that London bands had rejected Robert as too heavy or too strange for the mainstream. That night, Page knew he had found someone extraordinary. The very next day, Robert visited Page at his Victorian boathouse in Pangbourne. The house was filled with medieval tapestries, Eastern art, and books on the occult, setting the mood for what turned into an all-night session. Robert had brought along rare American blues records, including the complete works of Robert Johnson and recordings by Skip James, which matched Page's own collection. They stayed up until 4 in the morning, trading songs and ideas. At one point, they performed Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You, and Robert's voice rang so powerfully that it seemed to shake the wooden beams of the house. By dawn, they had mapped out the beginnings of songs like Dazed and Confused and Communication Breakdown, pieces that would later earn millions. With Robert on board, Page turned to completing the band. Robert suggested bringing in John Bonham, who was then earning $40 a week with Tim Rose's group. Bonham's drumming was so powerful that he had been banned from some venues for cracking walls with his bass drum. Page offered him $25 just to audition, which was nearly double what he was already making, and it worked. To complete the lineup, John Paul Jones, a session musician with credits alongside the Rolling Stones and Donovan, joined them. Jones had studied at the Royal College of Music and played multiple instruments with ease. By 1967, he had made more money as a session musician than many full-time rock stars. In just 3 weeks, this new group had come together, each member bringing rare talent, yet all earning under $150 a week in total. By September 1968, they were ready to launch. At first, they used the name The New Yardbirds, but legal threats from former Yardbirds bassist Chris Dreja forced them to change it. The new name came from a joke by The Who's Keith Moon and John Entwistle, who had once said Page's new band would go down like a lead balloon. Page loved the phrase, but changed the spelling to Led Zeppelin. He thought it perfectly described the mix of heaviness and flight, power and beauty that he wanted the band to represent. Led Zeppelin's first album in 1969 did not just enter the charts. It exploded onto the scene and changed rock music forever. Within months of forming, the band was outselling established acts and setting the sound that would later define heavy metal. Jimmy Page had found Robert Plant by chance, hearing him sing Somebody to Love at a college in Birmingham. He knew right away that Plant's voice was unlike anything else. On that debut record, Plant delivered high notes, deep growls and raw wails that gave the music a power no one had heard before. It became the spark that inspired future bands like Black Sabbath, Judas Priest and Iron Maiden. Before they even finished their first world tour, Led Zeppelin had already been crowned as the new giants of rock, and the path of music was changed for good. At the center of this rise was Robert Plant. His presence on stage created an image that fans could not forget. With his long blonde hair falling over his bare chest and his tall, confident stance, he became known as the Golden God. He did not just sing, he moved with energy, snapping his fingers, tossing back his head and striking bold poses that made every performance unforgettable. His look became a symbol of rock itself. In 1974, a music magazine even gave him the unusual award of Chestorama, saying he had the best chest in rock. Plant laughed about it later, saying he was honored but unsure what to say about his own chest. His colorful shirts, tight pants, and glittering jewelry only added to the image. The style he created influenced countless other frontmen, from Mick Jagger to Jim Morrison, and helped define what it meant to be a rock star. The moment that sealed their place in history came in 1971 with the release of Led Zeppelin 4. The album went on to sell more than 37 million copies around the world, making it one of the best-selling albums ever recorded. Its centerpiece was Stairway to Heaven, a song that ran over 8 minutes long and yet still managed to become one of the most beloved tracks in rock history. Even though the band refused to release it as a single, fans bought the entire album just to hear it. In the United States alone, it was certified 24 platinast, meaning more than 24 million copies were sold. Across the globe, the number reached 38 million. At the same time, their fame was rising. Plant's personal life was changing too. On November 9, 1968, he married Maureen Wilson. Their wedding reception was held at London's Roundhouse, where the newly formed Led Zeppelin performed, making it perhaps the most exclusive concert debut imaginable. Plant had met Maureen at a Georgie Fame concert in 1966, and as his career soared from small clubs to worldwide stardom, she became a constant presence in his life. He even wrote the song, Thank You, for her on their second album. Together they had 3 children, and Maureen provided stability at home while Plant was on tour. In those early years, their marriage gave Plant a rare sense of normal life amid the chaos of rock fame. But life on the road was not without scandal. The so-called Mud Shark incident took place at Seattle's Edgewater Inn. According to Carmine Appice of Vanilla Fudge, who later confirmed it in his memoir, members of Led Zeppelin and Vanilla Fudge were involved in a shocking encounter with a 17-year-old groupie and a fish pulled from the bay. The story gained more attention when Frank Zappa retold it in a 1977 live album. For years, it was dismissed as a myth, but the confirmation years later cemented it as one of the wildest stories in rock's history. The event happened during Zeppelin's first major U.S. tour, making it all the more startling since the band was still trying to establish a serious reputation. Plant's own feelings about the excesses of the rock lifestyle shifted over time. By 1975, he was disturbed by the growing groupie culture in Los Angeles, especially seeing younger and younger girls drawn into it. He wrote about this in the song Sick Again, where he expressed his sadness and frustration. In interviews, he spoke of being disillusioned with the scene, saying that what had once been exciting now felt shallow and wrong. By the mid-1980s, he openly called the rock star lifestyle shabby and mean-spirited, showing how far he had moved from the excess that defined much of Zeppelin's image. Plant also brought a depth to Led Zeppelin's music that many didn't expect. He wove his love for literature and mythology into his lyrics, often pulling from J.R.R. Tolkien's works and Norse legends. Songs like Ramble On referenced Mordor, and The Battle of Evermore drew heavily from Tolkien's world, with imagery that fans connected directly to characters like Frodo and Galadriel. He also tapped into Norse myths in songs such as Immigrant Song, where he sang of Viking conquests and Valhalla. This gave Zeppelin's music a richness and complexity that set them apart from other bands. During their Madison Square Garden shows, the band faced one of rock's biggest mysteries. Between Jadam Zarez 2 and Saddam Zarez Trip on July 29, about $200,000 in cash was stolen from their safe deposit box at the Drake Hotel. The money represented their earnings from the concerts. Tour manager Richard Cole discovered the theft when he went to pay the film crew, finding only passports in the box. Despite a full NYPD investigation and a detailed report, the money was never recovered and no one was caught. The theft remains one of the most notorious in rock history, and it was even referenced in the band's concert film. The song remains the same. Plant's growth as a songwriter was another major turning point. Early on, his lyrics were often criticized as simple and repetitive, but by 1970, with the release of Led Zeppelin 3, he had started writing more thoughtful and personal songs. Tracks like That's the Way and Bron We Are Stomp showed a new side of him, filled with storytelling and emotional depth. Encouraged by Jimmy Page, Plant gained confidence and developed a style that combined personal reflection with mythological themes. Then came the devastating accident in Rhodes on August 4, 1975. While on vacation with his family, Plant lost control of their car. The crash left him with a broken ankle and elbow, while Maureen suffered a fractured skull and multiple injuries. Their children, fortunately, escaped with only minor bruises. Plant feared Maureen would not survive, but thanks to immediate medical help and the band's resources, she pulled through. Plant himself was left with lasting damage, including memory problems. His injuries changed everything. He spent months in a wheelchair, and it took 2 years for him to recover fully. During that time, Led Zeppelin had to cancel a massive tried-set-I-tried-8 North American tour, including shows in Oakland, Kansas City, Atlanta, and Pasadena's Rose Bowl. The cancellations were a crushing blow for fans and cost the band millions. Even more painful, Plant had to adapt to recording while confined to a chair. 1977, Zeppelin had returned to the United States for a massive tour, their first in 2 years after Plant's serious car. Fans had waited impatiently, and now there were Pediceti-Jedin shows planned in major American cities. Madison Square Garden and the Chicago Stadium sold out instantly, each with 15,000 to 20,000 seats, and the tour made more than $5 million in advanced sales. On July 23, 1977, while the band performed before 76,000 fans at the Louisiana Superdome in New Orleans, Plant received a phone call that would change his life forever. His wife, Maureen, was calling from England with the news that their 5-year-old son, Carrick, had suddenly fallen seriously ill. She described him suffering from severe vomiting, a fever that had climbed to 104 degrees, and frightening weakness. Plant was 4,000 miles away. 3 days later, on July 27, Plant received the second call. Carrick had died from a rare viral infection that had turned fatal in less than 48 hours. Plant had planned to fly home that very day, but he missed the chance to see his son alive by only a few hours. Witnesses said he collapsed and let out a cry so painful that it echoed through the hotel hallway. The band immediately canceled the 20,000 remaining shows of the tour, walking away from about $4 million and disappointing more than 800,000 ticket holders. Plant shut himself away for 6 days, refusing to leave his hotel room, while bandmates and crew made sure he at least ate and drank water. He poured thousands of dollars worth of alcohol down the drain, refused any drugs, and told manager Peter Grant that he didn't think he could ever perform again. Their insurance company even tried to deny a Diva Zarez $3-million claim, saying family bereavement wasn't covered, which added another layer of pain to the tragedy. Plant spent the next year and a half in near total seclusion on his farm in Worcestershire, losing more than 30 pounds and rarely being seen outside of his close family and a few friends. The only thing that stopped him from leaving music altogether was the support of John Bonham. Plant later admitted he was ready to walk away completely, maybe even become a teacher, until Bonham stepped in. Bonham went as far as using his own 6-door Mercedes limousine, complete with a driver's hat, just to create a safe and comforting routine for Plant. He and his wife Pat lived nearby and stayed close to the Plant family, offering support that went beyond friendship. Without him, Plant believed Led Zeppelin would have ended in 1977 instead of 3 years later. The tragedy changed Plant completely. The man who had been seen as the golden god of rock, with his wild stage presence and mythological lyrics, no longer cared about fantasy worlds or rock star swagger. He wanted authenticity. He stopped indulging in substances almost immediately and focused instead on the reality of the people he loved. He admitted later that he spent much of that time questioning the worth of his life and what it meant to be a father and husband rather than a performer. Out of his grief came one of the most emotional songs in rock history, All My Love. Plant wrote it as a direct tribute to Carrot, calling it a way of paying tribute to the joy his son had given him and their family. He recorded the vocals in a single tape, unable to revisit the raw emotion more than once. The song was unlike anything Zeppelin had done before, built around John Paul Jones's Yamaha GX Jedin synthesizer, with no input from Jimmy Page. It was one of only 2 Zeppelin songs not co-written by Page, showing just how personal it was for Plant. He later said it was one of the band's finest moments. When the band recorded In Through the Outdoor in Stockholm in late 1978, the difference was clear. Jimmy Page and John Bonham were often absent due to addiction, leaving Plant and Jones to carry most of the writing. Plant's new perspective shaped the entire record, which climbed to #1 on the Billboard Diviesto and stayed there for weeks. 1980, John Bonham's drinking had reached a level that was impossible to hide. On Led Zeppelin's European tour in June and July that year, the warning signs were clear. During a concert in Nuremberg, he collapsed in the middle of the third song. The band claimed he had simply overeaten, but the press quickly pointed to alcohol as the real reason. The incident was so serious that he needed to be taken to the hospital. Rolling Stone later reported that he had recently overcome a heroin addiction and was taking medication for anxiety and depression at the same time. Combined with his heavy drinking, it was a dangerous mix. Those close to him could see he was on the edge, but no one could pull him back. On September 24, 1980, he began what would become the most tragic day of his life. Rex King, a Led Zeppelin assistant, picked him up to take him to rehearsals at Bray Studios. On the way, Bonham asked to stop for breakfast. At that single meal, he drank 4 quadruple vodka screwdrivers. That meant 16 shots of vodka, about 400 to 560 milliliters of pure alcohol, all before noon. Robert Plant later remembered Bonham saying, "I've had it with playing drums. Everybody plays better than me." In a strange and almost prophetic moment, Bonham even told Plant, "When we get to the rehearsal, you play the drums and I'll sing," before tearing off his car's sun visor and throwing it out the window. At the studio, he kept drinking heavily through the afternoon and night, never giving his body a break. The next day, September 27, brought devastating news. Around Jadon Zara's Chetrapete in the afternoon, John Paul Jones and road manager Benji Lefevre found him dead at Jimmy Page's Windsor home, the old mill house in Clewar. He had gone to bed about 13 hours earlier, placed on his side by a member of the staff to help keep his airway clear. At the inquest a month later, it was revealed he had consumed around 40 shots of vodka within 24 hours, about Jadon to Jadon Zara's 40 liters of alcohol. His blood showed an alcohol level of 276 milligrams per 100 milliliters, an amount that the coroner said was not compatible with life. He had choked in his sleep because the alcohol had numbed his body's reflexes. There were no drugs found in his system. He was only 32 years old, leaving behind his wife and 2 children. His death instantly brought an end to Led Zeppelin. 70 days later, on December 4, 1980, the band officially announced they would not go on without him. The surviving members, Robert Plant, Jimmy Page, and John Paul Jones, explained that they could not continue out of respect for Bonham and his family. Their choice was rare in rock history. The band gave up enormous offers to reunite. At one point, they turned down $50 million each for a U.S. tour, and years later, there were even rumors of an $800 million offer from Richard Branson. Njihova planirana sjevernoamerička turneja, koja je trebala započeti 17. listopada u Montrealu, odmah je otkazana. Era koja je definirala rock glazbu više od desetljeća iznenada je završila. Za Roberta Planta, Bonhamova smrt u dobi od 32 godine ostavila je prazninu koju se činilo nemoguće popuniti. U tom trenutku uskočio je Phil Collins, koji je već bio u usponu sa svojom vlastitom solo karijerom, rekao je Plantu, "Tip koji je sjedio iza njega svih tih godina bio je moj heroj." Svirao je bubnjeve na 5 od 8 pjesama na Plantovom prvom solo albumu Pictures at 11, pa mu se čak pridružio na turneji 1983 Godine. Plant je kasnije rekao da nije bio toliko Collinsov savjet, već ohrabrenje i podrška koja mu je bila potrebna da ponovno stane na svoje noge. Album Pictures at 11, objavljen 25. lipnja 1982 u Sjedinjenim državama i 2. srpnja u Ujedinjenom kraljevstvu. Dokazao je da Plant može uspjeti bez Zeppelina. Dosegnuo je 2. mjesto u Velikoj Britaniji i 5. mjesto na američkoj Billboard 200 ljestvici, zaradivši platinastu tiražu u Sjedinjenim Američkim Državama, Kanadi i zlatnu u Australiji. Kritičari su pohvalili album, a Rolling Stone je primijetio kako je Plant skromne ambicije pretvorio u veliki događaj. Bio je to jedini solo album u njegovoj karijeri objavljen preko Led Zeppelinove izdavačke kuće Swan Song prije nego što se ugasila. Sljedeće godine Plant je postigao svoj prvi solo hit s albumom Big Log. Pjesma je dosegla 20. mjesto na američkoj Billboard Hot 100 ljestvici i 11. mjesto u Velikoj Britaniji, a popela se i na 6. mjesto na Billboard Top Tracks ljestvici. Priča iza nje bila je neobična. U Rockfield Studiosu, dok su eksperimentirali s ritam mašinom TR-808, glazbenicima je ponestalo drva za ogrjev. Pronašli su trupac dug 4,5 metara i bez alata. Polako su palili jedan kraj dok nije postao šuplji. Taj neobičan trenutak inspirirao je tajanstveni naslov pjesme. Njegov glazbeni spot, u režiji Storma Thorgersona, sadržavao je jezive snimke Kalifornije i Nevade, uključujući Dolinu smrti i Las Vegas, te je pomogao učvrstiti novi imidž Planta. Plantova karijera je cvjetala, ali njegov privatni život se raspao. Njegov brak s Maureen Wilson, s kojom se oženio 1968, završio je 1983. bila je uz njega tijekom njegovog uspona do slave, smrti njihovog petogodišnjeg sina Karatska 1977 i raspada Led Zeppelina 1980. No zahtjevi Plantine solo karijere s njezinim stalnim turnejama pokazali su se prevelikim. Nakon razvoda, početkom 1990-ih kratko je izlazila s Ianom Hattonom, gitaristom u bendu Jasona Bonhama. Unatoč godinama razdvojenosti i kasnijem djetetu koje je Plant imala s drugom ženom, mnogi vjeruju da nitko nikada nije zamijenio Maureen u njegovom srcu. Plantov album iz 1988, Now and Then, postao je njegov najveći solo trijumf, objavljen 29. veljače, prodan je u 3,1 milijuna primjeraka diljem svijeta i dosegao 6. mjesto u SAD-u i 10. mjesto u Velikoj Britaniji. Album je do 2001. godine u SAD-u dobio trostruku platinastu certifikaciju. Na njemu se pojavio Jimmy Page u 2 pjesme, Heaven Knows I Tall Cool One, pri čemu potonja koristi klasične rifove Led Zeppelina. By blending his past with his new sound, Plant achieved what many thought was impossible, thriving beyond Zeppelin. U 1991, Plant welcomed his 4th child, Jessie Lee, with Shirley Wilson, the sister of his ex-wife Maureen. This unusual family situation surprised fans and created headlines. For Plant, the birth came after the devastating loss of his son, Carrick, years earlier. Jessie Lee has chosen a private life and is now Tridaceti Chetri, known by fans only through scattered details. U 2010, Plant began a relationship with American folk singer Patty Griffin after working with her in the Band of Joy. They spent several years dividing their time between Texas and England, but the cultural differences proved too much. Plant admitted he felt sadness and regret when they split in 2014. One of his most celebrated projects came in 2007, when he teamed up with Alison Krauss for the album Raising Sand. Against all odds, the record swept the 2009 Grammys, winning all 5 categories it was nominated for, including Album of the Year and Record of the Year. It was an unexpected triumph that showed Plant's music could still cross boundaries decades after Led Zeppelin. Today, at Sedam, Plant lives a quieter life with his partner, Dawn England. They spend time in Worcestershire, attending local football games and supporting community events. He has become patron of a local homeless charity and still tours with his band, Saving Grace. His net worth is estimated at around £200 million, much of it from Led Zeppelin's catalog, which continues to earn $8 to $12 million a year. Despite the fortune, he chooses a simple lifestyle, staying close to his roots while still making music.